Have your Bibles with you. Turn to Genesis chapter 18. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 18 this evening. This is a really cool chapter when you read Genesis 18. And whenever you kind of look at what's going on here, because Abraham is visited, as it says in 18 verse 1, by the Lord and essentially two angels. And in the Hebrew, the word Lord, it would be, in this particular case, is Jehovah. So it's Lord Jehovah. And then Abraham, in our English version, calls him Lord, but in Hebrew, it's Adonai that he calls him. And so it's a little bit richer if you kind of look at some of the original language there, but it's really neat to think about, the Lord Jehovah, which essentially is who we would consider to be Jesus. This is essentially Jesus, not in his same physical form that he had when he was on the earth 2,000 years ago, but this is Jesus, Lord Jehovah, who is here talking with Abraham. And he has a really interesting interaction with Abraham, and Abraham goes and fixes a calf for him and makes some bread for him, brings some water to wash his feet, all these things that Abraham does. And while they're there, starting in verse 9, the Lord has a couple of things to say to Abraham and to Sarah. Verse 9, they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "She is in the tent." The Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." But Sarah denied it, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was afraid. And he said, "No, but you did laugh." So he's having a discussion, essentially we would say, with Jesus, right? And Jesus tells him, "Next year I'm going to come back by here, and when I do, Sarah's going to have a son." And upon hearing that, Sarah basically scoffs. She's like, yeah. Right? That's kind of her reaction to what God is telling Abraham about what's going on. And then just like all humans do whenever we're caught, whenever we've done something we shouldn't have, what does she say? She's like, "Oh, no, I didn't do that." We all do. We all try to avoid or skirt around whenever we do something wrong. And God holds her to task here, and he says, no, you did laugh. He doesn't let it slide. He doesn't let her get away with it. But he does also still keep his promise through Sarah, which happens about that time the next year whenever he comes back around. And we'll get into that later on with Genesis. But verse 14 to me is one of the key parts here, and this is something that we kind of touched on in class. And it's something that we see Sarah here having a problem with. And he says in verse 14, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" What's the implied answer there? No is the implied answer, right? Nothing is too hard for our Creator. If you find yourself doubting God's ability, then you need to take a step back and look at yourself and look at what's really going on and consider the strength, the power, the authority of the one who created mankind, who created the earth, who created the universe, which we haven't even been able to see to the end of. I mean, we've got amazing telescopes, and all they keep showing us is more and more that's out there, which is just kind of crazy. But God, the one who has created everything, the Creator, is powerful enough to do anything. Ephesians chapter, I forget what chapter and verse it is, but it says that He can do more than we could ever think or imagine. So think about that. God is able to do more than we could ever even think or imagine. And so with the challenge of this brief interaction here, I want us to stop and think about, in what ways are we limiting God? In what ways are we not trusting God to fulfill His promises? Because when we're scared, when we put limitations on God, that's because we have doubt and we have lack of trust in what He can do and in His power. And so we need to identify those points in ourselves, which means we got to self-reflect. We got to look into who we are and what our struggles are. And then we need to come to God with a good, open heart, open mind to hear and to receive what He has to tell us and do for us and do through us. It's like Paul says in the Philippians chapter 4:13, we can do all things through Him who strengthens us. He is our power, He is our strength, He is our capability if we'll trust in Him, if we'll move forward with Him, and if we'll not have the same attitude that Sarah has, where we just scoff at what God tells us. You know, He says He'll be with us and ain't nobody can stand against us. So let's believe Him. Let's take Him at His word and let's step out in that, especially for you kiddos who are about to start school, right? Things are not going to be easy. Things are going to be difficult. Step out in the faith of what God teaches. Step out in the trust and don't be afraid. He says that over and over again. It's one of the hardest things for humans is to not be afraid. So don't be afraid. Trust in the Lord. Don't be like Sarah and scoff at what His ability is, because there is nothing that the Lord cannot do. This evening, I hope that you're encouraged by that. I hope that you take a moment to think about and reflect on what are the areas in your life that you are kind of like Sarah and you scoff at God and you say, He's not strong enough. He can't handle my pain. He can't heal my wounds. He can't heal my family. He can't heal my whatever. He can't take care of this situation or that situation. Yes, He can. Be open to what He can do. This evening, if you need the prayers of the church, now is your time to come as Riley leads us in our song.